Good afternoon. This is Warren from Channel 7 News. We're interviewing Bob and Martha Howard, who have first-hand information about the massacre. Mr. Howard, were you here at the ferry at the time of the 1996 massacre?
No, that was before we took over from the previous operators. But we lived locally, so I remember it well.
Can you tell us what happened?
I sure can. A young man by the name of Martin Bryant showed up at the Broad Arrow Cafe and started shooting with a self-loading rifle and ended up killing 35 people, and he wounded several more.
Did you ever hear why he committed this horrible crime?
So here is what we know. Martin's dad wanted to buy the Seascape guest house to run it as a bed and breakfast about a year or so after Martin came into some money.
And Martin's friend Helen left him almost $600,000 in property and assets when she died in a car crash. Was he old enough and responsible enough to handle that kind of money? We're not sure.
He was considered mentally handicapped, and there were reports from neighbors that he'd always done odd things as a child. But I guess Helen thought he was responsible enough. Anyway, he started traveling around the world and taking cruises soon after he got the money.
You mentioned his dad wanting to buy the guest house. Did Martin give his dad any money to help him?
As far as we know, he didn't give him any money. Anyway, while Martin's dad was trying to get the money together, Sally and David Martin bought it. Martin's dad was pretty disappointed, I'll tell you. He'd complain to anyone who'd listen what dirty double dealers they were. Martin was about 26, 27 at the time. None of us realized how bad Martin's dad took the whole thing. So when he committed suicide, it took us all by surprise.
How did Martin handle his father's suicide? Are you saying he blamed the Martins for the suicide? Was that the reason he killed all those people?
Well, he already had the mental issues. He did some more traveling, but I think he might have blamed Sally and David Martin because, if his dad would have been able to run the Seascape or the other property they wouldn't sell him, then he might still be alive. He just took it real hard.
Thank you, Martha. So do you think he was looking for revenge?
Oh, yeah. He started drinking, too. A couple years later, he told someone that he'd had enough and felt people were against him. He might have been getting paranoid.
What happened after that?
Well, that was late 1995. About that time, a television show called A Current Affair discussed suicide and possible massacres. Maybe in his mind he connected this with his father's death. Maybe it was revenge somehow for the events that led up to his father's death. You know how things get twisted in your head when you're not thinking straight. Anyway, he admitted later it was around this time that he started planning this whole thing.
You mean, the massacre?
Well, he probably didn't call it a massacre in his own mind. But yeah, that's what it was.
You said he killed people at the Broad Arrow Cafe?
That's where he started. He killed and wounded several people in the cafe and then the gift shop. Then he killed people around the buses that were waiting on the ferry and at the toll booth. He stole a car and killed more people at a service station. He stopped for the night in the Seascape and ended up setting it on fire, killing Sally and David Martin. He was arrested right after that.
What happened to him?
It was the strangest thing. From the time they caught him, the one thing he wanted to know was how many people he'd killed. When they finally told him, he acted real impressed. Anyway, some forensic psychiatrist testified that he felt Martin was acting under the copycat effect. I don't think Martin tried to claim insanity, he admitted he was guilty. The court sentenced him to 35 life sentences without parole and another 25 years for the other 36 charges.
Thank you for allowing us to interview you, Mr. Howard. We appreciate your help. That was Bob and Martha Howard from Port Arthur Ferry here in Tasmania. And thank you to our audience. We'd like to point out that a few weeks before this shooting, the media covered a shooting at Dunblane and a lot of attention was given to the perpetrator. The forensic psychiatrist that testified at the trial states this attention may have been what triggered Martin Bryant. This shooting is on the record as the worst massacre in modern Australia committed by a single person. Martin Bryant is 54 years of age at the time of this interview and currently serving his sentence at Risdon Prison. In the years shortly after the massacre, Australia passed stringent gun laws to curb the possibility of events like this. Just recently, A 20th anniversary memorial service was held for the victims of the Port Arthur tragedy. There were over 500 in attendance. We now return you to your regularly scheduled program.